A number of things one will often hear when making the statement, "I'm a full-blooded Indian." Usually the opposition will counter with the response, "Prove it." When this opposition wants a person to prove Native American ancestry, they are almost always referring to DNA testing and never referring to actual bloodlines through birth records, which is the only true method of discovering a person's real ancestry. When a person says, "I've done a DNA test and actually traced my roots to several countries in Africa, therefore this proves I'm from Africa," well, actually, no, it doesn't. You have just fallen victim to an antiquated and purposely deceptive manipulation tactic. When a person submits their information for a DNA test, people don't truly understand what they are really getting. Some think these tests actually prove that their families came from Africa, but it doesn't. It only proves that some percentage of West Africans, along with the majority of Black Americans, have similar genetics. This literally proves nothing more than relationship. It does not prove ancestry, which can only be proven through birth.
As far when it comes down to genetics, he says, we don't know the answer to this, not at this point. That was in 2002. I submit that President Hinckley is a prophet of God, because 1 year later, articles started to come out in scientific peer-reviewed genetics journals that talked about a new founding lineage. These were these forward lineages. They found a new founding lineage, which was primarily found among the Algonquin-speaking language groups of North American Indians. And they were indicated by 5 specific markers in their DNA that differentiate them from the other 4. And when they went looking for these 5 markers in other populations around the earth, guess where they found them? They were in the Druze population of Israel. They found that they were, later on, additional research found that they were in the Ashkenazi Jews population, which is the largest population of Jews on the planet. It's in the Sephardic Jews, the Libyan Jews, the Moroccan Jews, the Tunisian Jews. All of these diverse Jewish populations around the world have these 5 markers, which are also found in the Algonquin-speaking language groups, which is about 110 Native American tribes in North America. For example, the Sioux and the Cheyenne and the Blackfoot, the Cherokee, the Iroquois, the Ojibwe, the Sac and the Fox, Potawatomi, the Penobscot. All of these tribes, and mostly concentrated in the Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada, is where they find these 5 markers and these people.
These DNA tests categorize people into haplogroups based on similarities in genetics. When a Black American receives a test that almost always points to the west coast of Africa, they are doing so under the false narrative that the entire world's population descended from Africa. The reason for this is Charles Darwin and the theory of evolution, which has been academically accepted throughout the world of education, but has yet to be proven. In fact, all archaeological evidence confirms that the Americas are home to the world's oldest art, civilization, and most importantly, languages. These haplogroups, of course, fall directly in line with the evolutionary theory. There is one major problem, however. These groups have genetic variables that can be back engineered to prove genetic similarities between currently existing groups of people. And yes, they have been done, and the results show that the oldest population of people on Earth are here in America, but a very small percentage of so-called paper-backed Native Americans have this ancient DNA. In fact, the so-called Jews from the Middle East and Europe have none of this DNA. In fact, the world's oldest genes strictly predominate the lands of the Americas and are nowhere to be found on the continents of Europe and Asia. In 1585, the English established their first settlement on Roanoke Island in North Carolina. This attempt at settlement was funded by Sir Walter Raleigh, for whom the capital city is currently named after, although Raleigh himself never stepped foot in the colony. Raleigh instead would sail to South America in search of the mysterious city of gold, El Dorado. And just like his colony in North Carolina, Raleigh was unsuccessful. On Roanoke Island in Dare County, North Carolina, Raleigh's colony was in a struggle to maintain. Bad blood with the local Indians and the inability to establish trade and acquire the necessary supplies for survival caused some members to return in just a year. John White was an artist who traveled back to North Carolina on the return expedition, only to find a fraction of the people remaining. Again, he returned to England for supplies and provisions, but was unable to sail back to Roanoke due to the Anglo-Spanish War. He was held from returning until 1590 due to a dramatic series of unlucky events, but he finally made it back on August 18th, 1590, his granddaughter Virginia's third birthday. Virginia Dare was the first full-blooded English child born in America. When White finally made it back to Roanoke Island, the colony had been abandoned and left in shambles. there were no survivors. The only one of a few remaining clues was the word Croatoan carved into a post on a fort. Croatoan was the name of the Indian tribe that inhabited North Carolina's predominant barrier island, Hatteras. White was unable to find his daughter or his granddaughter Virginia, neither the children, men, and women of the colony, whom had numbered over 100 people. There is a consensus among historians that either one or two things happened. First, they were taken in by a local friendly tribe in which they were never located, or they were simply massacred and exterminated. Less than 2 decades later, in 1607, the English would establish their first successful colony in Virginia, Jamestown. And with Jamestown began African slave trade to America.
Is made up of 606 feet, 606 feet, 606 feet, 606 feet. 606. It's made up of stades, exactly the same. Now, if that's not interesting enough, look at the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the slope is 51.8 degrees. Let's go back to the earthworks. If you measure the line that goes straight through the center of the structure, right here, and then you go true north, it's 51.8 degrees. That angle is exactly the same angle as the pyramids of Giza. It is the same math, the same calculations as ancient Egyptians. Let me show you one more connection. In 1860, David Wyrick, he's a guy who surveyed the Newark earthworks. He was digging into a mound near those earthworks, and he found a wooden coffin made of oak. They opened up the coffin and found a skeleton of a man holding a little box that was about 8.10 inches in size. The box had been cemented shut here. This, by the way, is sitting in Ohio. Well, he opened up the box and he found a little man inside, a little black stone. They took it to scholars and they looked at it. The man seems to be carrying something, and there's writing here at first they couldn't recognize. The writing is, they thought in 1860, some sort of Hebrew. Well, finally, about 20 years later, they found some rabbis living in the area, and the rabbis looked at that and they could read it. They said it was an old kind of block Hebrew, and it was a rendition of the 10 Commandments. Now, this is another piece. Block Hebrew, they said they'd never seen anything like it. Mainstream archaeologists at the time called this a hoax. But then in 1900, or just about after 1900, in Israel, they found the same block-style Hebrew writing. Mainstream archaeologists still dismiss the findings. They found it in Israel and they found it in Ohio. But there was another stone that they found that they couldn't argue. This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee, since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement.